We are people of the ocean. The Pacific Ocean surrounds us. It provides our food, our transport, and our livelihoods.
But our islands are vulnerable. We are exposed to geological dangers like volcanic eruptions, earthquakes, and tsunamis. But we're also affected by weather-related hazards such as cyclones, droughts, and floods.
Climate change has also increased our challenges. Projections show that we will experience changes to our climate that can bring even harsher disasters.
The Framework for Resilient Development in the Pacific, an integrated approach to address climate change and disaster risk management, provides guidance to help make our development more resilient to disasters and climate change. This helps us to be better prepared and enable us to recover more quickly. We can build our resilience by integrating actions to address climate change and disaster risks into all sectors such as health, culture, education, water and sanitation, social assistance, energy, agriculture, fisheries, tourism, environment, and infrastructure.
Mainstreaming of the two of climate change and disaster risk management, because there are a lot of benefits. We can actually reduce the waste of resources that we invest separately in the two areas, because when you talk climate change and disaster risk management, the actions in terms of reducing risks are the same.
In the past, we've seen a lot of projects where these issues are dealt with separately, and many projects are sort of competing for the same resources. Now that the Pacific region has taken a bold move or step to incorporate both, and that will mean that we'll have a more coordinated approach in how we deal with both disasters and climate change.
The framework has 3 goals. The first goal is to better manage and reduce risks caused by climate change and natural hazards. The second goal is to reduce the carbon footprint of our development. And the third goal is to improve the way we prepare for, respond to, and recover from disasters. The framework provides high-level voluntary guidance to governments, the private sector, civil society and communities, regional organizations, and development partners so they can work more closely together to achieve these goals.
This framework calls for an approach that recognizes both human rights and promotes women's involvement in our development. It also looks after the rights of the most vulnerable in our island societies.
And I think the approach and the principle around multi-sector, cross sectors and inclusion, I think it really ensures that measures that are put in place both before and after disaster, or even in response to climate change adaptation, that covers and includes everyone, and everyone is everyone, including us, persons with disabilities.
This framework helps us work together to build a resilient future for our islands and for our people.
Bulavanaka, everybody. I'm Claire White. I'm from the Pacific community, and I'm here with 2 representatives from the Pacific. First of all, Ana Ake from Tonga. Yeah. Also, Jennifer Debrum from the Republic of Marshall Islands. So today our Ignite stage is about the framework for resilient development in the Pacific, which you just saw the video about. It's the regional framework that brings together the Sendai framework for disaster risk reduction and the Paris Agreement on climate change, as well as the Sustainable Development Goals at our regional level. It sits above the Pacific Island countries and territories, and it was endorsed by all of them last year. So we have a great unified and regional approach in the Pacific. And this is the first region, the Pacific is the first region in the world to achieve this integrated climate change and disaster risk management regional framework. So now we'll talk about how this framework is being implemented on the ground. The countries have been integrating climate change and disaster risk management for many years, and the framework is supporting their work. So I'll ask Anna from Tonga to provide us with some information about how they're implementing in Tonga.
Hi, you've just seen the film about the framework, so I won't go into that, but Tonga has started implementing the framework. We've got more than 670 islands, but 130 of those communities we have started with community development plans. And there's a tool that's used for the plans, which is the PLA tool, and it separates the youth, the women, and the men, and they come up with priorities for development, community development. The reason why we have used these plans is by integrating DRR and CCA into those plans is because the communities want those plans to be used and integrated. Those are the plans that they use on a daily basis. So community development goes hand in hand with disaster risk reduction and climate change adaptation. So there's no need to go and make other plans when you already have a working plan that they use. The community ownership also is quite important. So their contribution to their own development is vital to the strengthening of resilient development and achieving efficiencies in resource management. For example, always at the top of their priorities, they list water as a priority. And so for us to go in and say, what's your priority? Your priority is water. Okay, how are we going to DRR integrate this into your community development plans? And then we find out how much water is in the communities and what else do they need with water management and water catchment. Most of these communities only collect water through rain harvest. And so there are so many things that also come into play, which is wash for hygiene purposes and monitoring of these water tanks. We're done?
We might move on to Jennifer now.
Oh, okay. So we'll move on to Jennifer.
Thank you, Anna. So I think I'm going to focus my discussions on bringing down the FRDP to the national context. As we all know, there is no one-size-fits-all. The FRDP, the great thing about it is it's adaptable to the country context. And in the Marshall Islands, our experience with disaster risk has been a journey of no small feat. So we started with, I think our awareness began in Rio de Janeiro in 1992. I think weather patterns, this is when my government realized that weather patterns changes are probably or possibly linked to a changing climate. So the national response to combat this was for the government to establish policy. And this is where the FRDP, coming down to a country level, we have established the approving, or the cabinet and president approved the merging of the climate change policy and the disaster risk management plan, or it's better known as the Joint National Plan. And this implementation of this strategy is done through policies, projects, and programs. Disaster risk has been managed on the national level through frameworks established in the Joint Plan for Disaster. These are some of the sectorial policies in which we have aligned the overall national DRM and CCA plan. As you can see, we have aligned the Energy Policy and Action Plan, the Water Policy and Action Plan, Climate Change and Health Plan, Youth Policy, Women Policy. We have Land and Coastal Conservation, and we are working on our Ocean Policy, and soon to be established Building Codes and Standards. Our national policy, as I mentioned, and I think I will go to this chart here, and this just kind of shows the linkages between our national plan to the FRDP and the Paris Agreement in Sendai. And you know, this is kind of like showing how the global, the regional, and the national plans are talking to each other, or you know, how they interact. And it's through this kind of, so I just sort of thought that this visual representation would just kind of explain better what I'm trying to say here. And this is the implementation strategy for the JNAP. As you can see, it's we've taken such a whole island government approach to this thing. The unit is there. We work with communities, NGOs, local governments, building on what exists and learning. And yeah, community levels, we have come to recognize the significance of church-based groups and other organizations, CBOs, NGOs, women's group, and we have learned that it is very imperative to build partnerships in all of this using existing mechanism where it is relevant. Next one. And we also have a monitoring and evaluation framework, and these are the three fundamental reasons or foundations for having this. As you can see, we provide regular report. It's a mechanism to stimulate discussions on new initiatives, feedbacks and acquittals to donor partners, and so we have that kind of like in place. And of course, last slide, this is just, many of us, we face challenges. We're very small island communities, but we do our best through these guiding frameworks. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. I'd just like to thank Jennifer and Anna for their great presentations and showing their experiences of implementing the FRDP on the ground in the countries. Please stop by the Pacific booth, which is up in the marketplace. We have a number of brochures, and you can find our website on this card. Thank you so much. Gracias.